And as a government shutdown looms, Democrats, in typical fashion, are wasting no time trying to spin the facts. As we heard earlier tonight, the anointed one and his liberal cronies are trying to make it seem like Republicans are only looking out for the rich, class warfare. But as my next guest writes in her latest column, people who live in fat cat-infested houses shouldn't throw stones. And joining me now to explain the Democrats' latest example of hypocrisy, none other than the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Culture of Corruption. Michelle Malkin is back. Michelle, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Sean.
So people, Democrats in fat cat houses should not throw stones. Explain.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on a bumper sticker and sell it. And I think that we need to tattoo it on some of these liberal media types who go along with all of the class warfare demagoguery that the Democrats have been spewing, especially over the last week as they've ratcheted up this rhetoric to oppose any kind of fiscal sanity in Washington. And you've seen it. They have attacked Paul Ryan as some sort of corporate puppet. You've got Donna Brazile on Twitter. You've got Nancy Pelosi bemoaning how the wealthy are being served while the elderly are starving. And it begs a very important question. And the question is this. Who are the real fat cats? Who have been the ones who've been holding all of these lavish fundraisers while the basic business of government has gone undone? It's the Democrat Party, it's the fleabagger-in-chief himself, President Obama, and it's all of these people who have propped up the worst financial scandal in Washington's history, and that is the financial scandal of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and all of these fat cat cronies who've pocketed millions in lavish compensation.
Right. There's another way to look at this, too. I live in New York. All right. So federal taxes are 40%. State taxes are 10%. I live in the second highest county property tax county in the country. So they are enormous. Sales taxes, hidden taxes. So about 60 cents of every dollar I make goes to the government in some way, shape, manner, or form. What bothers me is they accumulate their power. With all of our money, half of America doesn't pay any taxes. And then not only do they take 60 cents out of every dollar, then they take a baseball bat and beat you in the head and say you're greedy and selfish and insinuate you don't care about the poor, the elderly, the disabled, that you want grandma to eat cat food. And that bothers me because they get their power using other people's money. That's what bothers me, Michelle.
Yeah, that's right, Sean. And someday I'll have to try and convince you to move out to Colorado and lessen your
Florida,
tax
where
burden.
it's a little warmer, but I'm not Colorado.
Yeah. Well, come on, you can ski out here. Seriously, of course, all of America's wealth earners and producers are the ones who are hurt most by this. And yes, it adds salt to the wounds for all of these class warfare demagogues in the Democrat Party to then turn around and use this kind of rhetoric. We don't care. We're the ones profiting, et cetera, et cetera. But what is the Fannie and Freddie, the phony and fraudy financial scandal all about? It's exactly what you're talking about. It's using taxpayer money. And by the way, we're now looking at $154 billion that's been poured down the hole on this. And then so much of it siphoned off by these greedy fat cat executives who are all politically connected. We're talking about the likes of Franklin Raines, who made off with $90 million over the course of 5 years during the time which so much of this manipulating of accounting was going on, to Jamie Garulik, Rahm Emanuel, who made off with $320,000 serving on Freddie Mac's board for a very short, brief period of time. And look, the Democrats are protecting them. And I'm calling this the Friends and Fat Cats Protection Plan. That's what it is.
That's true.
Just this week, the House had reform hearings. The Republicans have wanted to reform Fannie and Freddie for a long time. What did the Democrats do? They fled the scene. That's what they do.
And not only that, most economists believe we're going to have a second housing bubble. Let me give people an example. We talked about it earlier. This is Nancy Pelosi, the demagoguery, and I predict, Chuck Schumer said their strategy was to call every Republican extreme over $60 billion. Now Paul Ryan's plan, $6.2 trillion. And Nancy Pelosi, I'm sure she didn't read the bill, but of course she raced out there to say the following.
One of the bills before us, 6 million seniors are deprived of meals. Homebound seniors are deprived of meals. People ask us to find our common ground. the middle ground. Is middle ground 3 million seniors not receiving meals? I don't think so.
I view that as translation. Give us more money. We need more money. We want more programs. How do you interpret it?
Yeah, it's exactly the same way. Former Speaker Pelosi, or as she should be known now, Weaker Pelosi, has no business talking or lecturing about moral responsibility and fiscal responsibility. Certainly, she's the one who's responsible for the House failing to have a budget under her leadership. This is what she does. She hides behind human shields. She'll pick children. She'll pick seniors. And she'll use that sense of fake moral authority to avoid the tough questions, the tough crises that they've kicked the can on for decades. Bravo to the Republican leadership for having the courage to face these problems before they get even enormously worse than they already are.
Well said. Michelle Malkin, always good to see you. Appreciate you, as always, being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
Let not your heart be troubled. Our great American panel is next. And this is a Fox News alert. You're looking live at the White House, where the president is meeting with the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, in a last-minute attempt to avert a government shutdown. And we are awaiting their remarks on the outcome of that meeting, and we will bring those to you live. And for more on all of this, we go to our great American panel. He is the president of Regent University, Carlos Campos here. He is a Fox News contributor, comedian. Steven Crowder's back. She is a senior advisor at the liberal, leftist, socialist, extremist think tank. I'm kidding. NDN. Alicia Menendez is here, who won a bet from me, unfortunately. Good to see you guys. All right. I'm going to start with you because you're the liberal. All right. This is the first time since 1974 that congressional Democrats didn't pass a budget. How do you go? They should have passed this in October. How do you justify blaming this on the Republicans when they had control of the House, the Senate, by significant majorities in the White House? How do you get off even thinking of passing this responsibility onto them when they didn't do their job?
Well, because now we're having a very different conversation. I think we're having a good conversation right now.
Let's go back to my question.
Okay.
This is important.
They didn't have agreement. That's why they didn't pass it.
They didn't have agreement within themselves.
They didn't have
among themselves.
But I think that shows the diversity of their caucus.
Oh, it's a strength. Excuse me. Them being derelict in their duty is a strength.
You have diversity in your caucus. You have the Tea Party members who are really calling most of the shots on the GOP.
I'm a conservative. I'm a proud Tea Party member.
So amen to you, because they are really doing their job. They're doing exactly what they were elected into office to do, and that's the same thing you saw before.
Kevin McCarthy pointed this out. He wrote the Pledge to America, and everything they're doing, refreshingly, is what they promised.
How do you say to Americans, look in them in the eye and say, it's really about diversity in the caucus. We're losing our jobs, we're losing our homes, and that's what it's about?
But at least we'll lose our jobs and homes looking good and diverse.
No, but
I think Paul Ryan's proposal, I got to say, it's a great idea. What he's doing is great, and I know that there's a lot of opposition to it.
I want to get to that in a second, but on the shutdown aspect of this, her party had control. They could have passed it.
Well, she doesn't own it.
Before October.
Yet.
The deadline was October 1. All right, maybe they didn't want to pass it before the election. After the election, November, December, the early days in January, why didn't they pass the budget? And how do they blame Republicans now that they were derelict in their duty? That was for Crowder.
Oh, that was for me. Well, you can take that one to Alicia because she loves to blame Republicans. So let's see what she has to do with that one.
That was a pretty lame retort. But I think this entire blame game is kind of silly. I mean, the bottom line is there's a budget in front of us that is going to end Medicare as we know it, which is a big deal. There's going to be a tax cut for the wealthiest 1%.
I'm talking about the shutdown. Here's my question.
They're connected.
$61 billion is all the Republicans want. $61 billion. Wait a minute. This is why we're facing a shutdown.
Yeah.
$61 billion of a $3.7 trillion budget. You're telling me that's extreme, as Chucky says?
I am saying that they came and said they wanted $73 billion. Democrats gave it to them, and then they changed their mind.
No, that's not what happened.
Yes, it is.
$61 billion is all they're asking for. From now to the end of the year. Is that fair?
They have changed.
Is that extreme?
It depends on what you're cutting. And I think when you look at the actual cuts, when you look at it beyond numbers.
How is it possible that we're talking about $14 trillion in deficit and $61 billion? That cannot be the...
Okay, but
that's pocket change. You're right. And what they are cutting are things that need to be cut right now.
So tell me what they're cutting that needs to be cut, because I see the cuts to Medicare at the same time that they're decreasing
basically you're putting Medicare and giving more control to the state.
People like you.
So it can be allocated properly in local government. It's not about cutting it completely. That's just not accurate.
It's about moving to a voucher system.
Wait, here's my question. No,
Which is what we need to do.
Wait a minute. We're going back to 2008 spending levels because the country's on a path to bankruptcy. Wait, hang on. Are you saying this bloated, big, fat, bureaucratic government can't live within 2008 spending levels?
I am saying that I think there
that's
are
a
things
question.
like the FDA that are incredibly
I
important.
didn't ask that. Wait a minute. Explain to me why we can't go back to 2008 spending levels. Why is that extreme?
Because things have changed since 2008, because these programs grow to meet the need.
84% under Obama discretionary spending.
Do we also realize, though, this budget has very little to do with jobs and the economy, right? Like, this solely has to do with a conversation around the deficit.
Well, Obama said we needed to cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, deal with entitlements, but he didn't present any solutions himself. He punted.
Within an hour, he's going to walk out of the White House. He's going to compromise. He realized this is a suicide. It's nothing less than suicide. We're going to see it in less than
I'm not so sure. I think Obama may be naive enough. It's interesting because he doesn't have a backbone, and he's kind of gutless and timid. No, I believe that. I think you push him hard enough, he's going to bail
your
out.
fortitude to come out and say that.
Well, I believe it, and I just think he's going to. He may back down, but.
Do you want to make another bet?
How much?
I'm in.
There you go. You're the one who laid down the bet.
See, this is the kind of irresponsible spending we're talking about.
Exactly.
You're throwing money around. I will play no part in this.
Let not your heart be troubled, dog. Great, great, great American panel. Straight ahead. And this is a Fox News alert inside the White House right now. President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden are now meeting with the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid in an attempt to broker a compromise and forestall a government shutdown. And we are awaiting their remarks at the close of this meeting. And that we will bring to you live right here on the Fox News channel. And for more analysis, we continue now with our great American panel. All right, there's a controversy. We've been on the budget most of the night here. Herman Cain, who is going to run for president for the Republican nomination, said the following, and he has been under fire for it.
This is my point. If you take an oath on the Koran, that means that you support Sharia law. I support American law. Our laws were derived from principles that are biblically based. Maybe not said in the same words that are in the Bible. Our laws were derived from principles based upon the Bible. This is why I'm not going to back down or pander to anyone who wants to call me, xenophobic or a bigot simply because I said, no, I don't want anybody in my administration that I'm going to have to be looking over my shoulder to figure out if they're going to try to do something against the principles that I believe in, which also are the principles that the majority, the overwhelming majority of American people believe in.
Right. Now, Sharia is the antithesis of our founding documents, is it not?
Well, it depends on the definition of Sharia you're using, because I have seen many of them. But I think this
Quran's definition.
This argument is bogus, though,
Muhammad's
because
definition.
So our laws are largely based on Judeo-Christian principles, and I, as a Christian, appreciate that. And at the same time, there are things in the Bible, like stoning adulterers, that you and I would never take to be in American law.
Last time I read the Bible, Jesus stopped the
Jesus actually said, "He who is without sin cast that first stone."
See, that's the thing. People try and create this moral equivalency where they take specific verses from the Bible addressing specific nations or groups or laws.
There is an evolution from the Old to the New Testament.
It's not like the open-ended call to Sharia law like you see in the Quran. And I understand what he's talking about, it being the antithesis of the law. Just like, for example, Alicia, your father wouldn't want to have someone who completely disagrees with him on every issue as his assistant. That's what Herman Cain, I think, was trying to say, only it was one of those, oh, no, words are coming out and I can't get them back. He said it improperly.
Let me ask this, because the Sharia that I see is where in Saudi Arabia they have a morality police and women can't drive and they can't be seen in public. Sharia in Iran is women do get buried up to their waist and stoned to death. Women do not have the same rights as men. They need 4 eyewitnesses, male eyewitnesses, if they make an allegation of rape. So Sharia is the antithesis of our founding documents. What is your reaction to what Herman Cain said?
Well, my concern is this. If you're going to take an oath and you call for the Quran, you make that call, I question about authority. What's the ultimate authority? I think that's the question that Herman is asking. Is the ultimate authority the Constitution?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
So if that's true, and again, the people of Minnesota reelected Mr. Ellis. I'm not saying that is true of him. I think you say it differently, but let's not let people off the hook. Let's still ask the tough questions, because there are theocrats, there are Muslims who are theocrats that are going to say the ultimate law is...
Are you uncomfortable with somebody who believes that America should be Sharia compliant?
I am uncomfortable with somebody that says there is an authority greater than the American Constitution.
Absolutely. And of course, when you understand the concept of dimitude and the poll taxes, all of that, Sharia law can't work here in the United States. And there's a reason why even among the founding fathers, they were very apprehensive about having Catholics with those founding documents because of the higher allegiance to the Pope. Of course, we've sort of moved beyond that. But you're talking about a whole new league with Sharia law. Listen, it's not about a religion or about bigotry. It's about a geopolitical doctrine and theory that is laid out in this book that we have a problem with as Americans.
Can I just take, though, a tiny time out to say that in a country of 310 million people, there are 2 million people who are Muslims. So I think the idea that less than 1% of the population is going to somehow rush in Sharia law is beyond overblown.
But it's a big issue because look at the Sharia courts that have emerged in Great Britain and Europe and other countries. Look at how they banned the burqa in France and Belgium after trying to, have an outreach in their societies. They found that it doesn't work because there seems to be irreconcilable differences between free societies and those that believe in Sharia, which control and especially repress female rights, women's rights.
And non-Muslims.
And non-Muslims, apostates,
it's not about freedom, it's about power. That's what we need to do.
And infidels.
I think this is about the 2012 election and making an issue out of something that's not really an issue that now we get to talk about because it's election time.
We have to be diligent about these issues. There's no question about it. And I think that's what Herman Cain was really bringing to bear.
All right, guys, good to see you. We really appreciate it. All right, Fox is going to continue its coverage. We're watching a meeting going on in the White House right now. Vice President Biden, the president himself, John Boehner, and Harry Reid. Greta's going to go on the record. She'll have the very latest in their remarks after this meeting right here on the Fox News Channel. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night. See you tomorrow night.